Thanks, Director Lamb. Appreciate the introduction. My name is Grant Irvin. I serve as a Sustainability Manager for the City of Pittsburgh, and it is my pleasure to introduce our first presentation today, the Clean Tech Visions for a New Pittsburgh Economy. This team was led by Dr. Sylvia Borzutsky from Carnegie Mellon University and the Heinz School. It was really kind of an initiative that was led from an earlier roundtable that we hosted in the summer on the clean technology sector in Pittsburgh. What the students have done for us is really set forth a foundation with regards to a new and emerging sector in Pittsburgh with regards to technologies that are cleaning and improving our environment. Everything from the building sector, building improvement, building performance, clean energy, as well as software technologies that are being advanced right here in the city of Pittsburgh. So we're really excited today to hear from the team, which is going to be led by Kenny Berry and Molly Brennan. So Kenny and Molly, if you want to join us up here and kick off the presentations. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Molly Brennan. This is Kenny Berry, and we're going to speak about clean technology in Pittsburgh. First, we're going to introduce our team. Then we're going to talk about what clean technology means, and specifically what it means for Pittsburgh. Then we're going to talk about the sector here and our recommendations that we have for the city. So we had a 6-person team. 2 of our other team members are here today, Meredith in the back and Tristan, and our faculty advisor is Sylvia over here. And of course, we've been thankful to work with Grant on this project. We found that there are 4 main recommendations that we have for the city after our research. First, we recommend that the city sits down and really considers what kind of scope they want to have on clean technology, what they want to focus on, how big they want this focus to be. Second, create an Office of Strategic Investment, which we'll talk in detail about all of these at the end of the presentation. Third, support Pittsburgh Clean Technology Greenhouse, and 4th, create local markets here in Pittsburgh to create more demand for clean technology products and services. Kenny.
All right. Thanks. So to start off, one of the first things that we did early on in the semester was defining what clean technology really was. Other cities and regions have different definitions that fit with what their strengths are and what makes sense for their region. And in Pittsburgh, we looked first at a Bureau of Labor Statistics definition, OECD, and the Brookings Institution to see what they had, what sort of framework they had laid out for us. And essentially, all of those definitions are saying the same thing, that these are technologies that help create a cleaner environment. And in Pittsburgh, those 3, I'll go over them slide by slide here. So the first one is water technologies, water products and services, and those are essentially technologies that improve water quality or efficiency. The second is energy efficient building technologies, so any technology used in building new or retrofitted that optimizes energy use. And the third is renewable energy and pollution control. And with each of these subsectors of clean technology here in Pittsburgh, we found that there's an existing base of companies, organizations, and programs in place. But there is certainly potential for better coordination between these stakeholders in these subsectors, and our recommendations help address those. So now I'll talk about the research and methodologies that we used to arrive at those recommendations. The first and probably most important was speaking with people here in Pittsburgh and elsewhere about their thoughts on what a sector-based strategy for clean technology might actually mean. And that was anywhere from universities to accelerators to the city and economic development agencies here in Pittsburgh. Second was seeing what was written about in literature review through social science research. And finally, we looked at 3 cities in detail, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, and Portland, on strategies that they had employed and seeing which of those were transferable to Pittsburgh, and those are reflected in the recommendations as well. And our framework started off, it's twofold. I'll be talking about our supply side recommendations, and those are your traditional economic development strategies, and then the demand side of the equation, which Molly will be talking about at the end. Some of those are a little bit more exciting and possibly easier to implement in the short term. And on the top, the traditional economic development ones again, firm attraction, expansion, and creation. What is the role of public policy in incentivizing these? And at the bottom, what sort of requirements or incentives can the city put in place to help create markets for these products? So our first recommendation is, again, Molly mentioned, to refine a cluster-based strategy. And the first component of this is to not select subsectors, but to see where industry interest lies on this and which voices in industry are most interested in being better coordinated through these later recommendations. And we found with Milwaukee and Cincinnati, two of our case study cities, that they had really drilled down on water technologies and focusing on a single specific subsector that leveraged their existing regional comparative advantages. The second part of it is to take a regional perspective. None of the cities that we looked at were successful unilaterally in implementing their initiatives. In nearly all cases, they were either working with county or regional stakeholders, and in many cases had federal partners that were assisting in the implementation of this. And third is to leverage ongoing initiatives and what the other priorities are for the city and how those can be paired with a sector-based economic development strategy. And an important component of this is educating municipal employees on what it is that you're working on, and to look at what other cities have done in equivalent departments as part of these initiatives. Our second recommendation, so the second and third recommendation are two alternatives, organizational recommendations for what the city could do. The first one is a two-phase scalable sector-based strategy housed within the mayor's office that also addresses broader gaps in economic development functions within the city. And the second is a more distinct member-based organization that's coordinated by the city, but not operated by the city, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So creating an Office of Strategic Investment, the office would report directly to the mayor and be small and nimble with a flat organizational chart. And this office would also be responsible for linking existing strategies with initiatives launched by this office. And some of these initiatives would include consistently messaging and marketing the city's economic development objectives. Currently, there's no city counterpart to regional and county level economic development functions, but the city has recognized the need for this in creating a liaison to these groups within the URA, but more could be done. And a key responsibility within this would be ensuring that the city is closely connected with site selectors, the county, the conference, and the state on going the extra mile that's sometimes necessary to connect business attraction decisions with the city. And the second is that this office gives the city the capacity to implement cluster-based strategies like clean technology. And part of this is being able to assess within the existing industry clusters, meaning the Water Economy Network, the Green Building Alliance, and the Energy Alliance of Greater Pittsburgh, where the interest is. And some key responsibilities within this would be branding the Pittsburgh Clean Technology subsector, whichever one shows the most interest. And a key part of this as well is that it's scalable to include other cluster-based strategies, software, healthcare, whatever it might be. So if one subsector becomes fading, or if new ones emerge, that it can adapt to those. And finally, it gives the city the ability to create and seek investment and funding opportunities, whether it's lobbying state and federal organizations for Pittsburgh, which a lot of other cities have been successful in, or just working with what's here in Pittsburgh, whether it be with accelerators, venture capitalists, foundations, or universities, in creating some sort of symbiotic relationship in a clean tech development strategy. And the second alternative is for the city to support the creation of a clean tech greenhouse. This uses the familiar language of the Pittsburgh Life Sciences greenhouse, but it could be very different in scope. And part of this is that it's a member-based organization and operates at the regional level, not just within the city. And an important part of this is refining the scope early on, because some of these different subsectors within clean technology might have disparate goals or objectives. and it's important early on to make sure that those are focused. And the city's role in this would not be to choose these subsectors again, but merely to convene relevant actors. And in addition to this, the city could establish the clean tech greenhouse as a priority formally and provide ongoing visibility for clean tech greenhouse initiatives. And some functionality that could exist within this clean tech greenhouse that we've observed with other regional organizations in other cities is connecting members with one another to improve knowledge transfer, identifying specific clean tech investment opportunities. This has already been done with the Water Economy Network. How can we use regional impediments such as combined sewer outflows or shale gas wastewater management as an economic development asset? Third, advocating for clean tech priorities and working to implement some of the demand side recommendations that we'll have. Advocating for marketing the clean tech cluster. An important part of this is getting stakeholders together to be using the same branding language for whatever this subsector is. Measuring the magnitude and progress of the region's clean tech cluster through an industry database, and then supporting startup and member companies through consulting and accelerator services and potentially engaging with universities for innovation challenges. But one key obstacle with an organization like this is that they are expensive. Typically they operate with an annual budget in excess of $1 million. And most of these successful organizations have had a diversity of funding that's been available to them. But once the city is able to secure that funding, it seems like the infrastructure is here to move forward with a greenhouse.
Thanks, Kenny. I'm going to talk about the demand side now. So if we go back to that framework. Yep. Kenny talked about recommendations that would increase the supply of local clean technology here, and I'm going to talk about 5 different ideas we came up with for how the city can encourage local markets here. So the first idea was to offer expedited permitting or recognition programs for green infrastructure. And when I say green infrastructure, I mean rain barrels, green roofs, porous sidewalks, that type of thing. So right now there is not very much incentive for property owners, either residential or commercial, to include these types of green infrastructure on their properties. But the city can help change that by offering either expedited permitting so that developers see a benefit in adding it to speed up their timeline, or individual property owners get recognized in some way with like a lawn sign or some badge of I am a good homeowner to encourage them to include these things in their properties. Second idea is to revamp the city's RFP procurement and choice process. So this is 2 ideas in one. One idea was recently implemented in Philadelphia, and our team thinks that it's a good idea and we should consider it here. And that's called an improvement RFP. So they say, we have a social problem and we know that there are technologies out there that can help this problem, but we don't necessarily know what those technologies are yet. So we're going to put out an RFP that says, this is our problem, this is the general idea of what we're looking for, and then see what kind of bids you get back and go from there. The second part of revamping the RFP process would be to reconsider the characteristics and weights or importance given to the characteristics when choosing which contractor to go with. So right now the city heavily weighs the age of the contractor and like the age and experience and their experience working with the city in the past. And although those are definitely good characteristics, it might leave out newer innovative companies that could add value to the city. Third idea, it would be to coordinate some kind of local contractor training for local contractors to learn about the newest, best local green technologies. So right now there are a lot of resources being put into energy efficiency in the city, either through auditing programs or energy efficiency loan programs, but we're missing part of that supply chain by not getting those local contractors in on this, because they're the ones who are in people's homes every day. They're the ones recommending what products people should be putting in their homes. So we're recommending that the city coordinates with organizations like Green Building Alliance to hold these trainings to get contractors to know what are the best green technologies they should be putting in people's homes. Fourth idea would be to develop green infrastructure guidelines within the new Department of Permitting, Licensing, and Inspections. So right now, this kind of goes back to the first one I talked about, but right now the timeline for green infrastructure and development is pretty long because there is not a coherent guideline for how to permit bioswales, porous sidewalks, that types of thing. So we think the city could work with industry experts on creating a permitting process so that when a developer wants to include green infrastructure in their projects, they know that it's not going to increase their timeline to development. And last, we think the city should require utilities to share aggregate neighborhood level data on water consumption and energy consumption on a regular basis. And this data is useful for two main reasons. First, like I said, there are a lot of resources being put into energy efficiency efforts, and if we know where people are using the most energy and the most water, those resources can be very targeted and have the most bang for the buck. And then second, that data is really important because we could create a neighborhood competition. So Pittsburgh has really strong neighborhoods, and we could use that to our advantage by having a neighborhood competition of who is the most energy efficient, who is the most water efficient, and we could even use our city council members to cheerlead for their district being the most energy efficient, or any of us. So I gave you very quickly 5 demand-side strategies, but overall our recommendations are for the city to be introspective and say how much effort do we want to put into focusing on clean technology, how much resources do we have for this right now, create an internal office of strategic investment, or support a separate industry membership organization, the Pittsburgh Clean Technology Greenhouse, and then also in addition use some of these demand-side ideas to create local markets here. Thank you.
So we can go through some quick questions, but before we go into some questions, I'll be remiss to say if we don't have another acknowledgement for LaTrenda. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm LaTrenda Leonard, the Deputy Chief of Operations and Administration here in the city. Just want to let you know that I'm a resource for you. Anything you need, contact city. I have some cards here. Our Deputy Director and Director of Public Works are also here. We're very supportive of your work, so let me know if you need anything. And I have some cards I'll leave with Tara or Deborah.
Thank you. So are there any questions before? Any questions for this group? Can the group stand up, actually? Who's the group here? Everyone, and just a round of applause. Right there. Any questions for this team?
Did you make any evaluation of did you go any further in terms of your evaluation about which parts of clean tech might be? You noted that some other municipalities had taken a particular piece of clean tech as their focus, and you recommended that we have a focus, but did you actually go to the next stage and actually think about what area of clean tech seemed most likely for Pittsburgh?
The clean energy part of the equation seems to be more complex than the other two. In interviews, it was identified several times that it's difficult to divorce clean energy from a broader energy strategy, that their voice might get drowned out by everything else that's going on in Pittsburgh region. So it seems like that sort of strategy would have to be implemented very differently than would a building technologies or water economy strategy. But with that said, it seems like the other two subsectors seems pretty viable to pursue either of those.
Any other questions?
Well, I have one.
Yes.
Is there interested in this? I know that from a health perspective, there's in terms of getting that neighborhood aggregate data, there's privacy concerns which limit the information data you can get for health. I actually don't know that would be the same. Are there any issues like that, to the best of your knowledge, vis-a-vis energy demand and so forth? Because when you take a group as small as 1,000, is there any question about privacy for energy use and that kind of stuff?
Not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean there isn't. I'm just not aware of any.
Okay. Yeah. Just curious as we, the follow through on this recommendation, some things, the unintended sort of surprises that may come along the way. But those are all things to address in the next phase. Thank you.
Thanks.